scientists decided to take individuals from around the world who had multiple of these symptoms they called long hauler COVID. But every one of these people they were going to include in this study and experiment had to have already been trying drugs like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, steroids like prednisone, and they had to have tried rehab and occupational therapy techniques and modalities to try to restore these senses that they had lost. And they had to have their symptoms, none of them improving, for over a year and a half to be included in the study. When they came in, the researchers' next question was, have you ever used any tobacco products in your entire life or nicotine products? And they all had to say no, I've never used a nicotine product. Okay, great. Those were the only people that they included in this study, and they asked them all to wear a nicotine patch for 6 days only. And they wanted to know what happens when we put a nicotine patch on you, and had to explain to these nicotine naive people, because they'd never used nicotine before, why it is they were proposing they wear nicotine patches. So what they quoted to these people was, in the year 2020, every country in the world that did DNA testing to find out what was making their citizens sick had published, every country, that the DNA of the antibodies that is attacking in the person's sickness or illness, it was found that the cause of their symptoms were snake venom proteins that are targeting in the human body nicotine receptors on every cell. And in the beginning of COVID, by April of 2020, DNA experts had already figured out that it was snake venom proteins that was in COVID-19 patients making them sick. And on the screen, what you're seeing right now are actual screenshots right out of the nicotine patch study for the individuals who had long hauler COVID symptoms for over a year and a half that were getting worse. And what you're seeing on the screen is the red bar for this one individual. The red bar on the graph is the days they used nicotine, which was only 6 days. There are 4 days before the red line that goes up for the first days wearing the nicotine patch. 4 days before that, they start charting their symptoms and telling on a scale of 0 to 8 how intense their symptoms are. And then they wear the patch for 6 days and chart each day how severe each of their symptoms are, their long hauler symptoms. And what you notice on this screen is there is a day after the 6th day of wearing the nicotine patches, there's a day, a few days later, where 100% of all their long hauler COVID symptoms disappeared. And what you learn from the study is within the first 3 days of wearing a nicotine patch, half of all of their symptoms they'd had for 2 years were completely gone. They were only asked to wear the nicotine patch for 6 days. They followed up with every one of these patients 6 months later, and not a single COVID-19 symptom had returned that they had struggled with for 2 years to remit. There's another one, that's the next person. So in this one you can see they wore the nicotine patch, the red bar, and you'll see this fluctuation during the patch wearing where you'll see their symptoms were getting worse and better, worse and better, worse and better, and then they just all disappear and go to 0. Within day, I think in this case, day 23, I think it's the last day this person had any symptoms. But this person had these symptoms for 2 years. And you see the list at the bottom of the screenshot. Loss of taste and smell, tinnitus, dizziness, chest pain, memory dysfunction. These are all the things they dealt with for 2 years. Totally eradicated with 6 days of nicotine.
So